Hey, and welcome back to part 2 of our lecture. I try to keep these lectures broken into small digestible pieces, 10 to 12 minutes each. So remember, I'm just covering the introductory stuff to help you get going on the chapter and maybe into the labs. Don't forget, you got to put the time in doing your research on the web and maybe even a few other places. Lots of work to do, but so I'm trying to keep the lectures down a bit to keep you on the keyboard and learning about OSPF. So good news in this chapter is we can use a lot of our foundational knowledge from previous chapters. I'm going to slide away here and we'll get going on multi-area OSPF. Now, if you take a look at this configuration, you may say, well, this looks just like what I did before. What possibly could be different? The only change is right here, the area numbers. You've been putting area 0 in, and you've probably been wondering, area 0, why don't we just default to area 0? Well, you could, because every OSPF has to have an area 0, but now we're going to start putting in area 1 for an area 10 or whatever you have. Some of the exercises in the chapter, you have area 10. That's okay. Doesn't matter what the area number is, but now you have to think a little bit bigger and where it goes. But configuration-wise, it's quite easy. It's just a matter of what number you put in there. Okay. So, and for IPv6, nothing really changed there. You have to have a router ID, and then you go into the interface and type in IPv6 OSPF 10 area 1 or area 0. Not a whole lot going on there. There's not that you're thinking about your whole topology, you won't be in trouble. Now the biggest concept here is route summarization. We've been redistributing routes in OSPF, but that's different than summarizing. Okay? When we summarize routes, remember the idea is to reduce the size of the routing tables and to reduce the advertisements that go out. So instead of every subnet getting advertised, if we can summarize those into one area, into one bigger IP address, and then all of the traffic will still get to that router, and that router can sort out who's who. So in OSPF route summarization, let's take a look at area 1 here. Somewhere in area 1, we gather up all of the subnets, and we summarize them into one bigger network that holds all of the subnets. And just that summary travels out into the area 0 backbone. And say C1 is working as a super router here or a boundary router, then the R1 will summarize the type 3 LSA and send it out to the other two routers. Okay, so just the summarized routes go through, and that shrinks the size of the routing tables. And vice versa, it comes back that way as well. So that's on the ABRs and applies to routes from within each area. The ABR does the summarizing. And coming up here in a moment is what it looks like. So the external routes that come into OSPF on redistributions, ASBRs do those. So the ASBR takes care of externals. Nothing surprising there. So inter-area route summarization is within OSPF, all right, and that's the ABRs do that. So R1 is summarizing, R3 is summarizing, and then they receive each other's summarized addresses. And this is the example from the chapter. It's a little unclear as to just what's being summarized here, but inter-area we have 10.1.1.0 and 10.1.2.0, all of the networks that fit within that. Okay, but what does that look like? Well, here's an example of summarizing the two addresses. All right, to summarize these, what we do is we find the highest order common bit. So over to the right here, these are the host address. But as far as the network bits, we don't have any common bits here up and down. The first step, we write them out in binary. You got this again. We told you a long time ago. The better you know binary, the easier things will be down the road. Here we are down the road, and our binary is coming back to us. All right. So we write out the addresses, and we know that the 10.1.1.0 and 10.1.2.0. Well, how can we summarize these to be common? we know that the first octet and the second octet are the same, so that's not a big deal. The third octet, we need to find the highest common bit. So we start at the right, and we move left until we find common ground. Well, they're different here, they're different here, so we're at where the two zeros match and everything to the left is the same. That's our highest order common bit. So we can combine that into a /22 network because that's our prefix, that's our bit count of common bits. So anything will fit into that, all right? So we're going to take that as a 10.1.1.0 with a /22, all right? So 252, and that's going to work. And what that does is that summarizes 4 networks. That summarizes the 0, the 1, the 2, and the 3 networks. Those 3 networks get summarized into one summary address. Okay, so 10.1.0.0/22 is the same as 10.1.0 or /255. All right, so that's route summarization. It's a little bit of a head scratcher at first, but as you get used to it. So if we, now the other thing is in Multiarea OSPF, bad news, you have to do this manually. And OSPF's helpful in that it will create your mask for you, but you need to know how to do the route summarizations. And that's a big part of the challenge in this exercise. So here we see how we have 10.1.0.0/22 comes over as 10.1.0.0/22, and we don't need the other one, all right? We don't need the other ones within it. They're all in there, all those networks. So we've done area 1 range. We've determined a range of the networks to summarize. Okay? And again, we have our verification, show IP-OSPF neighbor, show IP-OSPF interface, and then for the multi-area information, show IP protocols, show IP route, and then here's a new one, show IP-OSPF database. All right? And of course, for version 3, we have IPv6 in front of those, and they're all the same. So the IP-OSPF database will show what's going on inside. And we'll get to that in just a moment. Here's the output for IP protocols, routing for networks. All right. Number of areas in the router is 2. Tells us how many areas are going on. And then in the IP interface, it tells us what areas our interfaces are in. So we know, now it's not going to say this is an ASBR. We just know that because it's got interfaces in more than one area, that's what it's doing. Here's the IP-OSPF. And then the IP-OSPF database. This is what that looks like. We have the router IDs, and then all the ages in that on our information. So, and then IPv6 protocol, same thing, remember, with the IPv6 inside. So that is what we're going to be doing here. There's the IPv6 database, where the router IDs, etc., tell you what's going on. And then we're good to go. So, it'll be a little bit of work getting our summary skills down, but I'm sure we can do it. All right, have fun. We'll see you in the lab class.